Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Lowry, and I'm the acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Texas. And we're here today to talk about violent crime. And violent crime is a huge problem in Houston and Harris County. I want to show you this map. You switch it over on the computer right here. Oh, they added some more things to my, sorry. Oh, there it is. Let's go back. This map that you'll see on the screen talks about a violent crime in Houston. And this is where violent crime is occurring. It's not just in one location. It's all over the city. It's all over the county. And we as a community need to come together to fight violent crime. And if we do, we can make a difference. The media is an integral part of that, to educate the public, to let them know where it is and to what's going on. And that we thank you for being here today. Behind me are members of our team, our violent crime team. And we fight violent crime every day, and everyone here works to fight violent crime. They're available in the mornings, they're available in the afternoons, they're available late at night. We do everything we can to make ours and your community as safe as we can. I want to introduce these team members right now. Right here is Assistant Special Agent in Charge Ted Dotz, and he's with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Next to him is Executive Chief Matt Slinkard, and he's with the Houston Police Department. Behind me on the corner is Special Agent in Charge Fred Milanowski with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Next to him is Gary Smith with the Treasury Inspector General's Office, called TIGTA. Let's see, right here is our acting inspector, postal inspector, Dana Carter. Mr. Kuhlman, Major Kuhlman, is over there from the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. And Ruben Perez is from the Harris County District Attorney's Office. These are just some of our partners who we use to help fight violent crime and to work together. Part of our deal is we need to collaborate and all work together to fight it. A prime example of this collaboration happened today. There was an arrest of 3 individuals who robbed a drug stash house and then shot and killed someone during the course of that robbery. Arrested today were Charles Dawson, Damon Randolph, Kieron Marshall. They will join Curtis Sandell, who is already in state custody, that will be moved over to federal custody. And there is a fugitive, Daniel Prince. They all face now life in prison for the robbery, drug conspiracy, and the discharging of firearm during their offense. But that's not all the violent crime work and cases that we've been doing lately. We've had carjackings. We've had using, brandishing, and discharging firearms. We have felons who are unlawfully possessing firearms. We have assaults on officers and assaults on mail carriers and other gang crimes. A couple of examples is an already convicted felon did not kill a federal agent attempting just to serve a summons. And the summons was just for aggravated identity theft. We have 2 men someone who robbed somebody in a safe place, which would be, you would think Subway and Family Dollar are safe places. They were robbed and brandishing firearms or showing a firearm. There was a carjacking where another man pulled a firearm on a lady to rob her car while she was trying to put her 1-year-old in the vehicle. We have multiple felons in possessions. They're not able to buy firearms or to possess firearms. And we work with the DA's office on this, in that they have felon in possession cases, and because of the backlog, they're sending some of us over to the federal side. So we're working in collaboration with them to try to get some of the worst offenders prosecuted. Recent announcement of an ELN member, and that is a transnational organized crime group. They were producing and distributing illegal narcotics into Southeast Texas. In the past year, there have been numerous of robberies and pulling of guns on mail carriers. And we have a criminal who shot at an ATM mechanic in the face while he was just trying to work on the ATM. Those are just some of the cases that we have had recently that have been indicted throughout the federal system. They're looking at penalties from 5 years in prison up to life. The other firearm offenses, if there's an extra firearm offense on top of it with the underlying offense, are looking at the ones we discussed, a minimum of 7 years up to life. The fines are from $250,000 to $10 million. We talked about felon in possessions. If they have 2 previous violent felonies or 2 previous drug trafficking felonies and are mixed, they're looking at a minimum of 15 years in prison up to life. And there's no parole in the federal system. I'm going to step back a little bit. I'm going to let our team talk to you about some of the things that they're doing in the violent crime arena.
Good afternoon. My name is Ted Dux. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Houston Division FBI, and I oversee the Violent Crime Branch. This morning, a joint operation with the Houston Police Department, we have 3 suspected members of the Violent Street Gang that were taken into custody, and they face charges of robbery and murder. During the robbery, the subjects obtained a large amount of wholesale narcotic and money, and ultimately murdered an individual. Each suspect is indicted on 4 counts with the maximum punishment of life incarceration without the possibility of parole. Today is another example where the FBI works tirelessly, diligently, and vigorously alongside our federal, state, and local partners across our jurisdiction to fight violent crime. In addition, last month, 2 alleged members of one of the most serious transnational organizations, the National Liberation Army, aka ELN, were extradited to the United States. This is the first time believed members of ELN have been extradited to the United States in their nearly 60-year history to face both narco-terrorism and drug trafficking charges. While these are only 2 examples of FBI's work to fight violent crime, it serves as a reminder to our commitment to the threat. We live in this community, our children live in this community, therefore the public concerns regarding violent crimes are the same as ours. In today's world, the threats we face are too diverse, too dangerous, and too all-encompassing for any of us to tackle alone. FBI Houston will continue to work alongside our partners to identify the most violent offenders and the most dangerous criminal organizations in our community. Thank you. Give it to Executive Chief Slinker.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, and thank you to the U.S. Attorney's Office very much for hosting us this afternoon to talk about something that we've all been talking about for quite some time, really since 2020, right? The increase in violent crime in Houston-Harris County. And as our Police Chief, Troy Fenner, and as our Mayor, Sylvester Turner, have said many times, Houston is not immune to the increase in violent crime that we've seen throughout the country since 2020 and then moving into 2021. And so what's really important today is to highlight, as we have several times recently, the partnerships that we are engaging in to do the very best we can for the citizens in combating this rise in violent crime and doing our very best to stem this rise in violent crime. I think the arrest today from a murder that occurred in 2018 and that robbery that was referenced is a perfect example of that. The hard-working men and women of the Houston Police Department, detectives within our homicide division and our gang division, working cooperatively with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office to work on a case that obviously is a couple years old and then bring that to some sort of conclusion and get suspects in custody. It just highlights and underscores that it takes all of us to make a difference in the violent crime that we're experiencing. And as our partners at the ATF and Special Agent in Charge Fred Milanowski has said many times in recent news conferences, and as the mayor mentioned even yesterday in his State of the City address, we have an issue with too many crime guns on the street and too many violent crimes involving firearms, whether it be murder, whether it be robbery, whether it be aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. We have approximately 3,800 firearms stolen from vehicles in the city of Houston every single year. Approximately 3,800 firearms that are reaching the street and often turning into crime guns from them being stolen from vehicles. And so we are still encouraging the public to secure their firearms to make sure that those do not become crime guns and in the hands of those that would harm the innocent in our society and those that would prey on others. The Houston Police Department, I want to emphasize today, despite the rise in violent crime that we have seen, the Houston Police Department will continue to work tirelessly with all of the partners that you see up here to continue to have the greatest impact possible with the resources that we have on this increase in violent crime. And we've been doing a good job at that. And the arrests this morning are a perfect example of that. Couple that with the press conference that we had recently on the robbery crew that we've been able to have some success on in taking into custody on the robberies that we had in the Galleria area and some of those longer term investigations that we are engaged in. This is just an example of one. There are many investigations that we're engaged in all of the time involving violent crime, and I want to thank all of these partners up here, both local, state, and federal, the Harris County District Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office for helping us when the necessary charges are put appropriately in the right system, whether that be state or whether that be federal, and depending on the case, we use all partners to make sure that we come out with the best outcome for our citizens. So thank you for your continued partnerships.
Thank you, Chief. My name is Gary Smith, and I'm the Special Agent in charge with the United States Department of the Treasury, Office of Inspector General for Tax Administration, otherwise known as TICTA. We're a relatively small agency, maybe 200 agents across the country. Our main mission is oversight of the Internal Revenue Service, and we are charged with the protection and safety of IRS employees. On August the 24th, while two special agents of the IRS Criminal Investigations Division was attempting to serve a summons on Mr. Ernest Taylor in South Houston, as they approached his residence, Mr. Taylor stepped out of his vehicle and opened up fire on the two federal agents and began to shoot at them as they approached his residence. Luckily, neither agent was hit or sustained any injuries, but some of the concerning things is that Mr. Taylor was a felon. He was in possession of a firearm, and when he opened fire on the two federal agents, he was about 6 houses away from a Houston Independent School District school, and the shots rang out towards the school, jeopardizing the safety of the students in the school. Houston Independent School District police officer was able to put the school in lockdown, was the first to arrive on the scene, and so I'm here today to thank the Houston Independent School District Police Department, the Houston Police Department, who also responded to the scene for us, and they were able to give us the full resources that they could bear to help us prosecute, file charges against the subject, and then the U.S. Attorney's Office for working with us throughout that night to make sure that Mr. Taylor was charged appropriately and was able to be held in custody pending the outcome of his judicial process. And I'd also like to thank the ATF for helping us out too. So as you can see, we're a small agency. There's no way that we could fully do our job without the partners that you see here with the U.S. Attorney's Office, our federal, state, and local partners. And so I'm here today also to thank them for their help.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd also like to thank the U.S. Attorney's Office for hosting this event and thank our partners as well for joining us and all the support we do together to have an impact on violent crime. My name is Dana Carter. I currently serve as the Acting Inspector in charge of the Houston Division, United States Postal Inspection Service. Strategic part of our mission, the United States Postal Inspection Service, is to protect the Postal Service, its assets, its employees, its customers, and ensure public trust in today's mail system. We have a defined group, women and men, formerly known as postal inspectors, who work daily to ensure that that mission comes into place. I'm here to tell you today that violent crime against Postal Service workers and employees is rare. However, when these events do occur, postal inspectors come together, dedicated, working with our partners, some of which you see here today, and with the U.S. Attorney's Office, to seek out those criminals, to arrest them, and to fully prosecute them with the help of the U.S. Attorney's Office to the fullest extent of the law. No one can accomplish all of this alone. And it is why I'm standing here today to thank our partners as we come together to become force multipliers working against any type of violent crime here in the city of Houston. I would like to thank all of the agencies standing here behind me once again. I'd like to thank the community. As it was said earlier by ASAC from the FBI, we all live in the community. Our children live in the community. What impacts the community impacts us as well. And we stand here today as a united front against violent crime here in the city of Houston. So once again, on behalf of the men and women of the Postal Inspection Service, thank you, and we look forward to the continued partnerships.
Hello, hello everyone, and I also want to thank all the partners that I'm standing up here with today from the federal side, the state, and local areas. I'm Wayne Kuhlman. I'm a major with the Harris County Sheriff's Office on behalf of Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. We're here today as a unified public safety team. We're proud to work alongside our city, state, and federal partners, and today is a reminder of what we can do when we all work together. It's about sharing intelligence and combining our efforts at all levels to target and prosecute the most dangerous offenders in our communities. And we are all working very hard together to accomplish this. It's about bringing these violent perpetrators to justice, protecting our community, prosecuting them, and making sure that we have a safe community. On Tuesday, we stood with our extended family at the Houston Police Department to address the immense danger of pistols rigged with automatic switches that turn them into machine guns. About cases we know of where these types of weapons were used, most recently in the murder of a Houston police officer. It's not uncommon for us to take on cases like the one referred to earlier by the U.S. Attorney that happened in 2019, where a mother was taking her child and putting her in the car and being robbed at gunpoint, and her car taken in these carjackings. It happens in the city, it happens in the county, it's happening all over. These grim stories are not outliers. They're not confined to one part of the county or one part of the city. They're happening everywhere. That's why we're here. It's unacceptable, and we'll do whatever it takes to keep our communities safe. But I would also like to make a partnership with the community. I'd like to remind y'all about Crime Stoppers and other entities that you can contact to bring forward information that will assist us in bringing these criminals to justice. So I want to thank everyone today, and I'm going to pass this off to Reuben. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Reuben Perez, and I'm a Special Crimes Bureau Chief for the Harris County District Attorney's Office. I work for Harris County elected District Attorney Kim Mogg. On behalf of Harris County District Attorney Kim Mogg, I want to thank everybody here, the U.S. Attorney's Office, Acting U.S. Attorney Jennifer Lowry, all the federal partners that are here with us, all the state partners, all the local partners. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to address this issue that we're facing here in Harris County and in Houston. We want to really, really emphasize, and I want to echo everything everybody has said here today, that we need to work together, and we are working together. City, state, and local agencies, Crime Stoppers, community action-based programs, and NGOs. Everybody's working together to combat this problem that we're having here in Harris County. Now, I think I have a unique perspective to this issue. As a retired federal prosecutor and now as a district attorney, I have a front row. I've been in the front row to see how everybody working together can come to a just conclusion, a successful prosecution of these violent offenders. It's great when we share resources, limited resources, when we share intelligence, when we all work together to prosecute these cases. Again, I want to thank the community. I want to thank everybody here. But before I close, I want to address something that I really think is important. Our Constitution protects every person on our soil. Every person on our soil. Our Constitution does not say citizens, it says persons. So I want to emphasize to the public, I want to send this message to the community, that regardless of your legal status in our country, regardless of your socioeconomic status in our country, no matter where you live, no matter who you are, we're here to protect you. We're here to do the best we can to make you safe. We're not here to deport you. We're not here to call immigration if you're a victim of crime, to say, hey, you know, we got a victim, please deport. We're not going to do that. We're here to protect everybody. So again, God bless everybody here with us. God bless the community. And thank you very much, Ms. Laurie, for giving us the opportunity to spread this message. Again, thank you.
Thanks, Chief Perez, and thanks to all the team members. We'll take a couple questions now, and then my senior advisor, Mark Donnelly, will come up and do a briefing in Spanish. So does anybody have any questions?
How do some of these transmit? Are they both prosecuted federally and by state law? How are some of these?
So some of them can be prosecuted under both. What we work with the district attorney's office to try to find out where the best place to prosecute this individual is. Say if it's a murder case, then it's better prosecuted in the state. We could only get a federal jurisdiction if maybe they had a gun and then they were a felon. They're going to get more time on the murder case than they're going to get on a felon in possession. But what we'll do a lot of times too is if they are prosecuted in the state on the murder case, we will do a complaint for a felon in possession, not file it, but have it ready in case they are released on bond.
Are all these cases linked, or you guys just put them all together? Right?
We kind of put them all together. This is just kind of some of the violent crime. They're not linked. There's some of the violent crime work we've been doing lately that have been indicted recently.
Can we talk about violent crime? We're streaming now. And it's like the trend, Executive Chief Slinker has put it, like we've been talking, violent crime is up since 2020. Well, the FBI is in the room. I don't know if they can pull like UCR reports or something for us. Like, what do we mean by violent crime is up? How many violent crimes are currently in the process of being investigated right now? Does anybody,
I don't have any specific details on that.
Sure, and we'll follow up with you for more specific numbers. If you're looking at all the violent crime like UCR.
It's just like, violent crime's up in Houston and Harris County.
Yeah.
It just helps so our viewers understand what that means.
Sure. So not every crime category, you mentioned UCR, right,
Mm-hmm.
which is the old Uniform Crime Report as it relates to major cities reporting UCR crimes through the FBI's guidelines. As we all know, we've done numerous press conferences on that. That changed a couple years ago where now it's NIBRS-based reporting, National Instant-Based Reporting System, and NIBRS, which is basically replacing the old UCR for stats and collection, which is quite a bit different, right, that system. So you have to be careful in comparing those statistics. But beyond that, not every crime category, when you look at UCR crime categories, you have Part 1 and Part 2. Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of the violent crimes in Part 1. Not every crime category is up. And so we'll follow up and get you some more statistics on that, specifically for the city of Houston. But specifically today, talking about murders, as we've said many times, we all know that murders have been up. And we've shared that several times. And we really saw that beginning in 2020. Hoping that it would stem a little bit moving into 2021, and depending on where we're on the pandemic and coming out of some of those things, hoping that some of those norms might return. Thus far, we haven't seen that. And just like every major city in America, we're still seeing the same thing as it relates to specifically an increase on murder.
You had a question?
How deep is the federal government intend to go to help, curb this violence? We have had cases recently. A grandmother was killed while stealing her purse. She was run over, and then there was another person like a week later on the same street that was dragged to her death because they were trying to steal her. How deep are you going to? Are you planning to go to get this? This is crazy sometimes.
I agree with you. If there is a federal nexus, we are ready to prosecute, and we'll work with our partners to build the case and to get the case ready and to present to a grand jury and to prosecute it.
So, in the 2018 murder, what was the specifics of that?
It was a drug stash house that the gentlemen that were arrested today went to go rob, and in the process of robbing it, they killed a gentleman at the stash house. And so they're looking at up to life in prison because they discharged a firearm during a robbery and a drug trafficking offense.
What kind of drug?
Cocaine.
With the talk about all this partnership from the federal level down, for the people who were waiting for their crime to be solved, is the message there's a chance that the person who perpetrated that crime is part of one of these crime rings? It just is going to take some time. In this case that you all gave as an example, 2 years or more from that 2018 Stash House bust. So, like, what's the message here on the teamwork for the people who are waiting for their crime to be solved?
So my message would be that we're working the cases. Sometimes it may take longer. We try as best we can to get the violent criminals off the street. It may be we don't have enough information at that time to prove that that person did that offense, but when we do, we're working toward to move them to indictment as quick as possible.
So since like all the incidents you guys are talking about are not really, they're not related to each other, and usually when you guys have one of these events, there's an overarching theme, or the crimes are connected, or it's a syndicate, or something like that. I'm just trying to get a handle on what your overarching point is today, with so many agencies together on, I mean, crime happens every day in Houston, right? In state, local, national level. So is there like a theme or something today?
We want to get the word out to the community. We want to get the word out to the criminals that we're here. I don't think that the word gets out enough to them to know. We've had people that have been arrested before and say, "You're not taking me federal, are you?" So we want to get the word out that everybody is working together, that if you're out there committing violent crime, that we are looking for you. And this is just an example of what we've been doing lately, and indictments that have been returned lately to give an overview of the things that we are looking at.
Yeah, I'll give you a perspective from a local agency perspective, and that being the Houston Police Department. One of the focuses of today that's important to highlight is, and it started really earlier in the week, right? When we talked about the fact that you have a switch on a weapon, and that switch in and of itself makes that a federal crime. And so when you are the local jurisdiction and you are like the Houston Police Department or any other major city local police department, it's not just about working with your state partners in the district attorney's office, which obviously we do on a daily basis. It's about working with all of your federal partners to have the greatest possible impact on curbing the violent crime, whether that's prosecuting when somebody's in possession of contraband that makes it a machine gun by law, right? One of those switches that we talked about earlier, or whether it's a crew that because of their activities together and their conspiracies together, or that fact that they might be a felon already in possession of a firearm and then committing another crime with that firearm, the fact that that also makes it chargeable in the federal system, all of those things are options that we as a local agency are going to use, right, to do the very best we can in holding those accountable that are preying on innocents in our society. And so one of the messages here today is, as a local law enforcement that is responsible for responding to violent crime in our city, we are going to use every resource that we can, including our federal partners, to make sure that we're prosecuting the best way we can the most violent in our society.
Do you think there are more crime crews out? Like, I'll never forget kind of your candidness after there was a crime ring that was busted by the SWAT team, like with these armored trucks. This is a few years ago, and you're like,
I remember it.
yeah, you're like, we're taking this on. This is we're sick of these crime rings. So then cut to the press conference earlier this week talking about all these people taken down. Here's another random laundry list of other crime rings taken down today. Is this where you think crime is trending, or do you think it's like lone criminals?
No, so when you talk about, you know, our motivation, right, or regarding violent crime, and speaking for the Houston Police Department, myself, Chief Fenner, all the hardworking men and women of the Houston Police Department, you know, it didn't take 2019 moving into 2020 and 2021 an increase in violent crime. It didn't take that for us to be upset with violent crime. We're always upset with violent crime. I've been upset with violent crime for 28 years of putting on this uniform, right? And I think that's a good thing. I don't care if it's one murder in your city or if it's, you know, a couple hundred murders in your city. If we ever lose that, right, then we've lost a lot. If we lose the fact that we're upset about any violent crime occurring in our city. So I think our interest, our drive, our motivation to have the greatest impact to help our community has been the same, whether we're in a period where crime is relatively low or whether we're in a period where crime is spiking and is relatively high. I think you're going to see the same interest, and I think you're going to be seeing the same motivation and effort put forward by the great people up here and definitely by the Houston Police Department. You know, it's just something that we're all talking about more, right? Because it's right in front of us. The fact that we are having more violent crimes. Again, I mentioned other crime categories, if we were to look across the board, are probably going to be down.
But do you think it's these organized rings that are at the helm of a lot of these crimes?
Well, I mean, I think that definitely plays a factor. I mean, you have times, obviously, if violent crime is going up, right, then obviously a certain percentage of that violent crime, it would hold true that there would be a certain percentage of that that's going to be an organized element. So as violent crime as a whole is going up, you can also assume that probably the organizational elements of that or organized crime is going up in that respect as well. You know, some crimes are lone actors and some are not. Some are crews, and we've been very successful in taking down some very, very violent crews that are working in collaboration and working together. The Galleria is one that I mentioned. The armored car you mentioned that I covered a few years ago. And then, you know, we talk about the arrest this morning. The arrest this morning from a crew that committed a murder a couple of years ago. And so, you know, obviously we see lone actors, but we also see suspects acting in concert as well.
I wonder,
Well, I mean, it's something that can be studied for decades, right? And probably will. When we look back across the nation and we look at 2020, 2021 and that increase, there have been other periods in American history where crime has increased. And there's been many studies done. I think there are probably a lot of factors, societal factors. I think there's a lot of factors as it might relate to issues related to pandemic, coming out of that, economy, other things. So there's a lot. The entire criminal justice system, us working together, making sure that everybody's working coming out of a pandemic and that we're all putting our best foot forward to have the greatest impact for our community. I think all of these things are potential factors contributing to the rise that we've all seen. And I think it's going to take quite a bit of time to ascertain exactly what was the biggest factor. But we can't wait for that, right? We can't wait for studies to determine why did it happen, why did the nation see this increase. To a large degree, those issues are secondary when it comes to law enforcement. We have to be engaged in moving forward and engaged every single day in addressing it because it's here, and we can worry about the factors of why it happened for decades to come.
But I think, can somebody, one of the federal folks speak to the fact that, I mean, the statistics clearly shows this is not like, Houston is not alone, right?
Not
Like,
at all.
we hear from people and they think, you know, their neighborhood or the Galleria or something, wherever, and it's just like the worst it's ever been in their whole entire lives. But it's a trend that clearly shows nationwide and clearly related, you know, to pandemic and supply chain and
Right.
all those other things.
You're correct.
A lot of work. Can you talk to that?
So Fred Milanowski, especially in charge with ATF. And let me first answer your question about the crews. So 3 years ago, we saw this violent crime, and with the partnership with Houston Police Department and the Sheriff's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office and the DA's Office, Postal, everyone got on board with Crime Gun Strike Force. Okay, we have dedicated AUSAs and dedicated DAs. And the three things that they look at are armed commercial robberies, knife and link shootings, so that's our ballistics program, mostly non-fatal shootings, and then firearms trafficking. Where it comes to the Hobbs Act commercial robberies, those are crews. We've taken off dozens of crews that are good for 15, 20 robberies of CVS's, phone stores, the Galleria that the chief talked about, the Galleria armed robberies. In the last 3 years, we've taken off a dozen of those. So those are crews. We do have some gang problems in the city of Houston, right? And there's some shootings and retaliatory shootings from the gangs. No, not much different than any major city in America. But why is it happening nationwide? You know, we've had a record volume of guns sold over the last 8 years. It's not just the last 4 years, over the last 8 years. So that doesn't mean guns are bad. It doesn't mean people who buy guns are bad, but it just puts more opportunities for criminals to get their hands on them. Chief Slinker talked about the guns being stolen out of cars. Our number one challenge in Houston with criminals getting guns is from breaking into motor vehicles. That's the problem. That's where they're getting a good majority of their guns. And the other challenge is that people who own guns don't keep records of their make, model, and serial number. So even when the gun does get stolen, they can report it to the police, but the police can't put it into NCIC because they don't have make, model, and serial number. So very well, we could have a lot of these murder weapons that police have come in contact with already, but they weren't reported stolen, so the police weren't able to seize them. So for a variety of reasons, we're having it, but it's nationwide. When we look at something nationwide, you got to know that the pandemic does have some influence, right? There's a lot more family violence we've seen nationwide than what we're used to. And that is unfortunate because people are cooped up and it's problematic, they're stressed out, and bad things happen. But certainly the volume, and I'll call it the quality of guns, right? We talked about the auto switches. When I came on this job in 1990, they handed me a 6-shot revolver, okay? Nobody has a 6-shot revolver anymore. Now, criminals have access to a Glock firearm with a 30-round magazine that fires fully automatic. That's a whole different world. And if those types of guns get in the hands of these active shooters, you can only imagine if Santa Fe High School, if that individual would have had one of these, how much worse it would be. So that's why it's critical for us. And that's why we're working with the Sheriff's Office and the PD, and that's why we did the press conference this week. And that's why we let the community know about the Galleria robberies. The Violent Offender Squad from HPD jumped all over that. 55 armed robberies in the Galleria this spring and early summer, and they've knocked it down along with support of the Crime Gun Strike Force and the U.S. Attorney's Office and the DA's office. And the nice thing about having ADAs and AUSAs together that come to our coordination meetings every Tuesday is they can talk and they can decide where's the best place to prosecute this and how's the best way to do it. We all know that there's a challenge with the backlog of cases at Harris County. We all know there's a challenge with people that are out on bond continue to commit crimes. And so if they're violent criminals and they continue to commit gun crimes, we've committed with the U.S. Attorney's Office and HPD and the Sheriff's Office for ATF to adopt those cases and indict those felon possession cases or the carjacking cases that Jennifer Lowry talked about. That way, there's potential for us to get those people off the street. And our mantra is, let's get shooters off the street before they become homicide suspects. That's our goal. Now, people will ask, homicide rates are still going up. The strike force arrested about 250 people last year. If those 250 violent criminals with guns were still on the streets, it would even look worse than it does today. So we continue to, with our partners, listen, nobody in Houston has the resources that we need to prosecute and to investigate and prosecute all this violent crime. And so if we're not being efficient and not working together and we're working in silos, that's problematic. And so we got to knock those down, which is, again, one of the reasons we established the Crime Gun Strike Force 3 years ago. And doing the best we can. Everyone is. HPD, in comparison to, cities like Chicago, that has 13,000 police officers, they do an outstanding job with the resources they have. So, thank you.
I do want to ask one question, just
Sure.
because I'm trying to bring it back to our viewer. And the people that are watching this live, the comment is, get a gun, get a gun. In Texas, you now can just carry it wherever you want as long as you have this legally. And it's like a circle. You're talking about all these guns getting stolen out of the car. You talk about custodians arming themselves with a gun. You're talking about professional criminals who are willing to kill you over serving a summons. I just don't understand how to sum that up to the viewer to understand that they are part of this, they play a role in this too.
Absolutely.
Can
And
you
we
help
say,
me?
well, let me say it like this. Every U.S. citizen has Second Amendment rights, but they also have responsibilities. And leaving a gun in the passenger compartment of a vehicle when you're not there is not being a responsible gun owner. It's not against the law, but it's not being a responsible gun owner. Our recommendation is you lock it in your trunk, or there are lots of aftermarket safes you can have bolted to the carriage of your vehicle. That's being responsible. But put in a glove box where any screwdriver can open that up and get a pull, you are contributing to the problem. HPD had a sergeant killed 2 years ago in a domestic violence incident. That gun was stolen out of a car. That could have been prevented. And listen, we all know this is Texas. We know there's a gun culture here. You're not going to change that. But we would like to see the public take some responsibility and lock up their guns in their car and at home, right? We see lots of young kids get their hands on guns and accidentally shoot themselves or others. That's tragic. Nobody wants to see that. And so, yeah, we are asking the public to be responsible gun owners.
So let me call Senior Advisor Mark Donnelly up here, and he'll give a briefing in Spanish.
Buenas tardes, soy Mark Donnelly, asistente fiscal federal. Todos los días como compañeros trabajamos para combatir el crimen en Texas. El crimen violento continúa plagando a nuestra comunidad. Los medios de comunicación son un parte integral para educar al público, y esa es parte de la razón por qué estamos aquí hoy. Trabajamos juntos cuando y donde sea, por la noche, por el día, cuando sea. Esta es nuestra comunidad también, y queremos hacer todo posible para asegurarnos que todos se sientan seguros en nuestra comunidad. Todos trabajamos juntos para asegurarnos de que los peores criminales sean frente a la justicia, si sea estatal o federal. Colaboramos para buscar justicia en cada caso. Presente hoy, como socios, son ATF, el FBI, el Inspector General de Tesorería, la Oficina del Fiscal, el Departamento de Policía de Houston, la Oficina del Alguacil del Condado y el Servicio Postal. Como ejemplo de nuestra colaboración, hoy la detención de 3 hombres que robaron un escondite de drogas y cometieron asesinato durante el robo. Estas 3 personas fueron Charles Dawson, Damon Randolph, Keon Marshall, y tenemos también como fugitivo Daniel Prince, cuya foto está aquí en las televisiones. Y también parte de ese grupo fue Curtis Sandel, que ya estaba bajo custodia estatal. Todos ahora se enfrentan una sentencia de vida en una prisión federal por robo, conspiración de drogas y disparar una arma de fuego que resultó en una muerte. Pero eso no es todo. Tenemos varios otros delincuentes en todo el área de Houston. Robos de coches, robos de armas que están en coches, uso de armas, como el jefe de la policía Finnard describió antier. Delincuentes que obtienen y usan ilegalmente armas de fuego, crímenes de pandillas, asalto contra oficiales y carteros. Algunos ejemplos de eso también son un delincuente ya sentenciado disparó contra agentes federales que intentaban entregar una citación por robo de identidad en Houston. 2 hombres que robaron con arma un restaurante de Subway y también un Family Dollar. Otro hombre apuntó una arma a una mujer y le robó su auto en un estacionamiento mientras ella estaba poniendo un hijo de 1 año en su asiento. Hemos trabajado con el Estado para traer a nivel federal delincuentes que posean armas. También el anuncio reciente de la extradición de miembros del alto rango del ELN, que son responsables de producir y distribuir sustancias ilegales en el sureste de Texas. En el último año, hemos visto varios casos en los que nuestros carteros locales han sido asaltados de punta de arma. Tenemos miembros también del MS-13 cometiendo asesinatos con machetes para avanzar sus posiciones en la empresa. Estos delitos traen sanciones desde 5 años en prisión federal al mínimo hasta vida en el cárcel. Otros delitos relacionados con armas de fuego son consecutivos y comienzan de 7 años hasta vida en el cárcel. Y también hay multas de $250,000 hasta $10 millones. Continuaremos trabajando juntos para combatir el crimen violento en nuestra área. Estamos unidos en este esfuerzo, y nunca, nunca descansaremos. Gracias.
Thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate it. And thanks for all of the team here for being here. And it does take everybody, the community and all of these folks behind me and all of our other agencies to make our community safe. Thank you.